Hello and welcome to this Python and Django live coding session. Today we'll be continuing working on the Jerry Life Caregivers app. Previously we focused on building some data visualizations that kind of tell the story of how caregivers are spending their time in well-being institutional care facilities, elder care facilities where nurses are responsible for various activities like cleaning and food preparation, and they also rely on other types of employees and volunteers to help with those types of activities, that type of work, including in this case we've got nurses and I believe volunteers, but there could be other roles involved. And what we want to do is sort of merge this prototype project with an existing product that we've been developing for several years. I believe at least 5 years now, and it's been built with a full stack JavaScript framework, and we want to port this, the majority of the backend code at least, over to Python and Django, and use a little bit of JavaScript on the client, and perhaps have an API that can drive other types of client-side applications. The goal is to offer a holistic view into these caring communities, these institutional care homes, to make sure that not only are the residents there living fulfilling lives, but the staff and volunteers who help take care of them are also not overwhelmed or not doing work that's outside of their normal duties, job description, so to speak. By looking at both sides of those, the resident well-being and the staff well-being, we're hoping to improve the efficiency and just overall conditions in these care homes. So in order to merge this previous project, which is here on GitHub, with this prototype project, we'll take a quick look at the app code. And essentially, wow, so that's been in this code. We should have defined the could be in the imports. Yeah. The domain model. I'm not going to go too deeply into the code because I'm not sure how much will carry over, but the domain model is what is important. Django applications are organized in apps, so each app represents a particular kind of group of functions and data tied together, and the apps in our case are modeling aspects of the home, the care home, and the software system. So we have accounts because it's a software tool, but then in the institution there are caregivers, which could be nurses, volunteers, or other types of roles, as mentioned, even family who collaborate on providing various types of care for the residents of the home. So we have homes where the residents live and where the caregivers work. And we have work, which is types of activities that are geared towards running the institution and providing care to the residents, so things like food preparation, medication dispensation, and cleaning, other types. So basically accounting for the physical and biological and nutritional educational needs of the residents. So the kind of foundational work and keeping the place clean and running. What we also want to do is look at least one layer above that, so to speak, the well-being or wellness of residents and people in general is informed largely to by the degree of like freedom and richness of activities we experience in life. So, for example, going outside or listening to music, interacting with friends and loved ones, those are essential activities that promote wellness for people in all stages of life. And we want to provide a tool that gives insight into not only the baseline functioning of the care service or institution, but also the residents' well-being in terms of these activities. And we had some screenshots here which have moved from the running app, but essentially these are the residents in a home and types of activities like listening to music or doing some kind of I believe art or cultural activities or sports like going outside and yoga. These are usually low impact activities or self-guided activities. Still learning the Suomi language, but in any case, this is the goal of GRE Life, and that's actually a screenshot of our prototype, which is actually beyond prototype stage now. It's actually a fairly mature application that's been deployed across the city, and we are going to revitalize it by adding new features and porting the kind of previous code over to the Django framework for longevity reasons. So I'm going to today start with this kind of lengthy introduction with some basic models, domain models, adding residents to this application, and learning from our experience in the development of this well-being application. The domain model evolved over time, and we'll try to just retain its essential features and maybe add a few new features like a hierarchical model for homes, so that we can represent small and large care systems. So an individual care home or even just a person, all the way up to citywide or nationwide care networks that have different sub-levels like municipalities and campuses and buildings and even wards. We want to be pretty flexible in the way the data is modeled, which is quite a complicated undertaking. So let's go ahead and hop over to the code and start a new branch. Let's see, we'll just call this resident. Now I believe we're going to need residency, which is the relationship between a resident who lives at a home and the home. Because people come and go and even move around within a care system, so we have this aspect of transiency. We need a way to represent that in the data so that we can look historically at trends such as the overall well-being of residents from the previous year compared to this year, or this month compared to the same month last year. Because the residents currently in the home may not have been living there last year. Likewise, the residents living there last year, some who may have departed into the home, shouldn't be included in reports from today, the home today. So we had to add this aspect called residency or something along those lines. We might change the semantics, but it should basically, the code and the names of the entities should reflect the domain that we're modeling. I just realized the chat is disabled, so that shouldn't be the case. Let me just see if I can enable the chat, or get the chat up in case somebody has a question on the live stream. I may just have the wrong link. So 1 second, and then we'll get to the code. I'm also essentially ramping back up my live stream, and getting back into this project, so I'll have a faster cadence in future live streams. Oh, here we go. All right, now I'm in the chat just in case. Cool. So yeah, we'll look at the model here for residency. And the validation. A lot of which we had to cook our own validation because the framework we were using wasn't so much, well, it's fully fledged in a lot of ways as Django. These are specs. So let me double check how our models, where our models are defined. They should be in lib or server. Collection. So we will need to start with the resident. It's a foreign key. And the home will be a foreign key. We'll just start there. However, we'll need this intermediary table. So it can contain these dates. We'll look at the proper model, proper way to model these with Postgres. It could be a date range, could be 2 fields. They need to have conditions for checking overlap. I believe we should have a constraint that the residency should not overlap for same resident in different homes. That might be the case. All right, so what we'll do is target an app for residents. And the residencies can also live there. Now in our model, I will install the app. Install, and I'm gonna start linting as I go. I should lint the whole project, but when I do that, it makes for a big pull request. I'll do this full project linting in a separate pull request. But anyway, so we've installed my file system is not. Changes aren't being monitored very good. All right. Cool. So we've got that installed. Now we're going to create a model. Okay, so you got an app, which is the plural of the principal entity you're trying to model, and then the or domain. It doesn't have to be a specific database entity. It could be an area of similar like subject functionality. Anyway, it's a way of grouping databases, tables, and functionality. So here we have a singular representation of a resident, which extends from the model. And I was doing a little bit of research today. Just oh, it doesn't. This is actually not relevant. I'll leave it with the default identity. So the default identity in Django is an integer field, so we'll leave that be. But we might need to use UUID if we use this ID in URL slugs, as we've done in a previous app. I'll cross that bridge when it arises. Now, if we look at our resident model as a reference, we've got first name. It's the only sort of personally identifiable information we want to collect about somebody. And so we've got access control intermixed with this schema. And the framework doesn't let us define schemas, so we turn to a third party thing where Django gives us rich data modeling primitives, and also primitives. First name, last initial, string, and we'll need to work out this access control stuff. I don't remember writing that field, but okay, then the person is naturally going to have some interests, which may be useful for caregivers. And here's an example of a field we learned. Not only did we learn that, what seems obvious in hindsight, that people come and go, move in and out of these homes, but they also have times in their life where they're not able to participate in well-being activities, and we needed a way to represent that. You know, this person's maybe feeling sick today or something, so there may be a more simple way of describing, but a hiatus would be a period of absence. Probably not the right word. Well, it is. Yeah, break, pause. Well, we'll go forward. We can change the domain model later if needed. So there's not much to the resident schema. We don't want to keep too much person identifiable information, as mentioned, and we just need to keep track of the fact whether that this person is able to participate in activities, whether or not they are. So. I guess their first name can be fairly long. Now the last initial would be excellent. 1. Now, this is not quite enough to uniquely identify a lot, people from a large group. First name and last name even can collide. And different people can have the same first name and last name, especially with common last names and first names. So what we're trying to do is give a little bit of information in combination with the home so that the caregivers can know who this page is, who this information represents. Let me just double check here. I'm not sure we're using this interests description, so I'm not going to carry it forward. This will be, I can define that in Python. Let's do that real quick. Full name. This is nice, I don't have to think too much. But even this first name, last initial, it's making assumptions, cultural assumptions. And it's actually not aligning with schema.org, for example. They call it a given name and a family name. So that might be something we would change, but for now, yeah, so and I'll keep it. All right, so we get the full name. These activities can be retrieved through a foreign key that Django will automatically define recent activities. I think come back to that. Yeah, so then the access control, we'll have to come back to that as well. I believe this is a pretty good start for the user model. I will register this with the Django admin while we're prototyping, and just I think it's generally useful. Let's get a really quick boilerplate here. Copy and paste from yeah, something like that. When I copy and paste, I clearly don't remember this stuff. So import the model. There. It's obvious. I mean, it's very self-explanatory, in other words. Yeah. Just in the habit of pasting that in. So now if I go to admin, we should be able to add a resident. I don't remember. There we go. Yeah, and pluralized. I think I was going to get in the habit of doing that manually because this app needs to be localized. So let me grab that as part of the model definition. Work model verbose name, and we want a string which should return the full name basically. And I'm going to be fairly explicit about the tables so that we can refactor and move that refactor the app, move the models into other apps. And it makes our SQL queries more obvious, self-documenting basically, and I need to import the text lazy. That should have been done first. That's not correct. There we go. So let's add a person. Yeah. So I need to call the method. Very good. Initial residence model complete. Complete. Now we will probably want to display it. Display a resident front end. This is where a little bit of security comes into play, because we have by default sequential IDs, and it's easy to guess a sequential ID based on any other ID, or just the fact that they start with 1. You can kind of start browsing the library of residents, so to speak. We will need to add access control. And I need to define a template for this in a view for this user, this resident, so we can show information about the resident on the front end. So I might want to switch to UUIDs at the start. I did a little bit of research on these hierarchical models. The residents are not hierarchical, so this is not a caveat, but for other models like homes, we can't use UUIDs for the home ID if we want to use one of these off-the-shelf hierarchical models, to my understanding. There's Django Treebeard. Anyway, for a resident, I believe I can switch to UUID fields. So let's go ahead and look at a code example. Here. I think it's from Django. No, it's just reading my information. Okay, and I need to go. So this is actually a good stopping point. Let me get this view functioning in the template to display the name, then I'll call it good for today. And we won't override the context right now. Just get the person's first name. Let's see. That's a good machine. Yeah, it's fine. Resident. Oops. Let's alphabetize these. Resident, not many typos there. Resident will be the context, object name, and resident detail. Cool. Now we're going to just do this new file. Just being explicit about everything. I don't have, oh, yes, I do have extend base HTML and block. Oops. All right. Now, how do we do? One more time. Tab. There we go. Heading 1. Should work. We'll just start with that resident element. This is a problem. I don't want to, somehow this doesn't do a very good job of formatting Django templates. It's formatting like HTML, but they're not strictly HTML. All right, but in any case, I believe now if I go to this resident and yeah. Yes, so now we have residence HG. interview, but I've got to head out really shortly. Detailed view in the URL. URL is .py and you put that in the main URLs. Just trying to save some time here a little bit. Sometimes I can create more headaches for myself. Copying and pasting without thinking about it. And then the URLs, core URLs, just need to, I think it's something like this. All right, now I believe if I just refresh this person, I don't know. I have to define a reverse. Get absolute URL. Reverse. Then everything will be wired up. View on site. Another person. Yes. Let's commit, push, and call it a day. So I'm just going to say add person URL, add person view. Add resident view. Push it up to GitHub. If you want to check it out on GitHub, we will open a pull request. Draft pull request, and there it is. Go ahead and post this in the. Anyway, here it is. Jerry Life Caregiving pull request number 11. Okay, this has been a Python and Django live coding session. Thanks for your time checking it out. If you've got any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below the video. I'll try to respond to every question or comment that, and made with good intention, so to speak, good faith. And if you're interested in contributing to this project or similar, you can stop by github.com/jerrylife. Thanks again for your time and have a great day.